Welcome to video 23 of Gamer to Game Developer Series 1, and in this video we'll implement the ParticleCannon. So we have a couple of objectives. The first two is about setting up the prefabs associated with the ParticleCannon. The first is for firing the particles, and the second is just the hit effect when that particle hits something. Then we'll go ahead, we'll edit our change weapon script, the health and damage script, and then we'll make a simple icon for our particle, and then we will actually discuss the FirePorticleCannon script. So basically how our system works is that the player has selected the ParticleCannon based on their change weapon script, so then the FirePorticleCannon will be active, and when they left click, the particles will fire at a very high rate, and also a ray will be cast to determine where the particle hit effect should get instantiated. So particles, we can't capture the position of the particle when it hits something. We need to use a ray cast to figure out where it is going to hit something. So we just store that position and instantiate a particle hit effect later. Okay, then after that, the particle, so if it hits an enemy player, then the particle will apply damage to that enemy player. So the scripts involved for the ParticleCannon is the FirePorticleCannon script. It looks at the player energy script to deduct energy, and it can only fire if there's sufficient energy. And also it looks at the change weapon script to see if it is the currently selected weapon. And of course, when the particles hit an enemy player, they talk to the health and damage script on that enemy player. Alright, so let's move on to our first step, which is to set up the ParticleCannon prefab. The ParticleCannon is going to be a stream of particles, so we need to set up a source for that. So we're going to make our game object that's going to be the one that emits the particles, and we just need to set up the appearance for it. So first we'll create a new material, and I'll name it ParticleCannon. I'll assign, let's see which texture. I'll assign our blaster explosion texture. I'll change the shader type to particles additive. And I don't want a green color, I'll actually want a light blue color. So I'll change the color as well. So let's go to the tint color, and let's change it to an R of 90, so red 90. Let's change the green to 180 and blue to 255. Okay, let's have a look at that. And that's right. That looks about right. It'll have a blue color now. Next, I'll create a new game object. So create empty, and to this game object, I'll add a whole lot of particle components. So component, particles. Let's add the ellipsoid particle emitter. Again, let's also add the animator. We'll add the renderer. And we'll also add the world particle collider. And that's what's going to allow us to have each particle apply damage to an enemy player. So it allows us to have hit detection. Let's scroll down to the renderer and change that material. So let's give it our new material, which was ParticleCannon. Okay, so that's what it looks like at the moment. And I'll change something with the World Particle Collider. I'll set the collision energy loss to 3. And I'll turn on the send on collision message. Alright. Now this collision energy loss bit right here, all that is that's the amount of energy that the particle is going to lose per second when it strikes something. And I'm only going to give by the script, in the FirePorticleCannon script, I'll give the particle an energy of 2, which means that it'll last for 2 seconds. So this 3 here means that the particle will just die out straight away. We won't see it bouncing. So if we kept the energy loss really low, you could have a bouncing particle. And if also the particle has a high amount of energy, you can actually make it a bouncing particle. Okay, and yes, it collides with everything. That should be fine. And send collision message. Yes, we set that. That's good. All right. Next, I'll just turn off the particle emitter because we don't need that at the moment. We'll only emit it when we want to by script. So I'll just turn off the emitter. It'll not emit anymore. And I will also add another component. I'll add the network view component. So let's go to component, miscellaneous, and network view. And as usual, I'll turn off the synchronization and have it observe nothing. Okay, none. All right. Because we're going to attach the FirePorticleCannon script to this, and that is going to instantiate, it's going to emit the particle across the network, and that's why we have a network view component. And this game object, we're going to attach it inside of our players. So another thing while we're at it, I'll just reset the position. So I won't reset it, I'll reset the position. And I remember that the players, yes, they had a height of Y of 0.5. So I might as well put the same height. I don't have to adjust it later when I drop it into the player. Now I'll also just create a new prefab as well. So I'll create new prefab and I'll name it ParticleCannon. And I'll drop in our game object that we just created. I'll drop this in to that prefab. Okay, that's done. And I'll just delete this from the hierarchy. And that completes it for this step. Now we'll go to the next step where we'll set up the prefab for the hit effect. We're on to our second step, which is to set up the ParticleCannon Hit prefab. Okay, so now we'll work on the hit effect. So once again, we'll create a new material. So create material, and we'll call this one ParticleCannon Hit. And we will assign that same blaster explosion texture that we did last time for the ParticleCannon material. So let's select that. And once again, the blaster explosion. And I'll change it to particles additive. And I will also change the color once again. It'll be slightly different. So for the red, I'll give it 100 this time. I'll change the green to 250. And I'll change the blue to 255. Alright. So that's it. It's a somewhat brighter looking color. It's a bit more green. And I'll create a new game object now to hold the particle effect. So new game object, I'll just reset it. And I'll add those particle components to it. So component, particles, add the ellipsoid particle emitter, add the particle animator, and add the particle renderer. Okay, and in the renderer, once again, just change the material to our new ParticleCannon Hit material. So that's it, ParticleCannon Hit. And that's it. Now we need to change all the other properties to get the effect that I'm after. So let's go back up. So for the particle emitter, I'll need all these settings. So for the minimum size, I'll set it to 0.2. I'll set the max size to 0.2. I'll set the min energy to 0.1 and the max energy to 0.3. And so this hit effect will only last for a really short time. And I'll set the min emission to 30, the max emission to 40. I'll change the tangent velocity. So let's go over to the tangent velocity. And I'll just bend the camera down a little bit so we can keep an eye on the particle effect. I'll change the tangent velocity, the x to 0.5. I'll change the y to 0.5. and I'll change Z to 0.5 as well. And I will turn on one shot, so all of the particles in one hit. I've explained it before, I'll just quickly mention the sizes. As you know, the size of the particle, and the energy is simply the lifespan of the particle, how long it'll last, and the emission is how many particles should get emitted when this animation runs. Okay, and the one shot is just make them all appear in one go. And let's go over to the ellipsoid now. We need to change the ellipsoid shape. So I want to bring all the particles, a lot closer together. I want them to bunch. So I'll change X to 0.1. I'll change Y to 0.2 and Z to 0.1. So now all of the particles are very close together. It'll look like when the particle cannon is firing, it's a stream of fast particles. When it hits something, it'll look like, well, the visual effect, basic visual effect I'm after is like a sort of brief, sort of burning looking effect that appears when the particles strike a surface. Anyhow, so I'll set for the particle animator now. I'll go over to the particle animator and turn on auto destruct. And that should be it for the settings. So auto destruct is it'll just delete itself after the animation plays. It'll get rid of this game object, the game object that's playing it. And I'll create a new prefab. So let's create a new prefab. And I'll call it ParticleCannon Hit. And let's drop our game object into there. Drag it down, drop it in, delete the original game object from the hierarchy. And that's it. We've set up our prefab, so that's pretty neat. And we can move on to the next step. Our third step is to edit the change weapon script. Let's open up our change weapon script. And there it is. Jump over to mono develop and let's add a new comment. We don't have much code to add to this. It's pretty simple what we're going to do. So now right here, the FirePorticleCannon script accesses this script to determine if it is the currently selected weapon. Alright, and in our enum state, we'll add a new state. So let's put a comma there. Oh, not a semicolon. My apologies. Comma. And let's put in there ParticleCannon. Okay. I'll scroll down. I'll create a new space for texture. So a new texture variable. So public texture. And I'll call this ParticleCannon icon. Okay. Then that's it for our variables. So let's scroll down some more. And in the start function where we're adding states to the weapon list, so the weapons that we can select, we'll add here weapon list dot add state dot ParticleCannon. Okay, so that's it for the start function. Let's move over all the way down. Inside that void selected weapon window, we'll add a new, a new option that'll appear as we're cycling through. So we didn't need to change the update function at all, which is neat because it's simply based on what's inside the list. Okay, so I'll just put here if selected weapon is change weapon.state.ParticleCannon, then, and why not, let's just copy paste this code right here, since the only thing that we need to change is the icon itself. So the icon now is the ParticleCannon icon. So right there, ParticleCannon icon. And yes, we want the weapon style we want to use label width for the width of this window. Well, for this label, sorry. And we want to use label height for this label as well, and inside that label, we're showing that texture, the particle cannon icon. Okay, so let's save it. And that's it for this script. We've edited it. Just do a really quick check in Unity. No errors. Nope, I can just get rid of that comment right there. Oh, no, wait, there's something here. Health and damage. Oh, that's our FirePorticleCannon script. So this error is appearing here because I've copy-pasted in the FirePorticleCannon script from the scripts available for download. And inside it, it has references to the change weapon script and the health and damage script. And since it has a reference to the health and damage script, it's trying to do something there, but that we haven't updated that script yet, so it's throwing up an error. So don't worry about that. We'll change that in the very next step. Okay, so let's move on. We're on to our fourth step, which is to edit the health and damage script. Okay, let's open up the health and damage script. And let's start editing it. So I'll add here a new comment that this script is accessed by the FirePorticleCannon script. Okay. We'll add in two new variables. So over here, after taking fall damage, we will add in public bool hit by particle cannon is equal to false, and private, so private float particle cannon damage. It can be set to public, and then you could change the value from the inspector, but I prefer to keep this just private to keep the amount of content shown in the inspector panel to a minimum. So anyway, private float particle cannon damage is equal to 1.6f. Alright, so that's it for the variables. Let's scroll down in the bit where we check the type of weapon that the player has been hit by. Oh, and I shouldn't forget the semicolon there, of course. So let's scroll down. Okay, so hit by blaster, if taking fall damage. So after the fall damage bit, why not let's add our new bit of code here. So let me see. I should write a comment first. I should write apply damage if the player is hit by an enemy particle cannon. So if the player is hit by an enemy particle cannon, so if hit by particle cannon is true and destroyed is false, then we'll set my health is equal to my health minus particle cannon damage, and we'll fire off the two RPCs. This one, update my current attacker everywhere, and update my current health everywhere. So let's go ahead and copy paste those. And let's then say hit by particle cannon is equal to false. Let's save it, and that should be it actually. We shouldn't need to edit anything else in the health and damage script. So let's just jump back to Unity and check out the error. Let's see, I'll just click clear there. Yeah, there's nothing appearing, so that means it's fixed and it knows what we're talking about now. So let's move on to our next step. We're on to our fifth step, which is to make the particle cannon icon, and this will be used by the change weapon script. I've opened up the GIMP, so let's go File, New, and we'll set it to 512 by 512. Hit OK, and the first thing I'll do is Layer, Transparency, add Alpha Channel, then Edit, Clear, so get rid of the background, so now it's a transparent texture. Next, I'll use the Pencil tool. What I'm going to do is draw this diagonal, just draw a diagonal line across it, and I'm going to use that line to help me position some particle looking effects along the line. So I'll use Shift, I'll hold my left shift down, I'll click, and so you can see a sort of line appearing. Then I can just left click again, and there we go, I've drawn my line. Okay, so I'll just select the layer again, and I'll go to the Filters, Light and Shadow Gradient Flare. So Filters, Light and Shadow Gradient Flare, which we use a lot. And let's see, I'll probably use, let me have a look at Distant Sun. Yeah, okay, this is the one I'll use. I'll use Distant Sun, so let's just make a copy of it. And I'll name the copy ParticleCannon. Okay, and let's edit it. I want to change the color to blue, obviously, or a type of blue. Under the Glow tab, I'll change the size to 120. And I'll change the hue rotation to -75. So that selects the color. Okay, that's the color that I'm after. I'll just click OK. Yeah, that is what I'm after. Now I'll just select where I want it on the image. So I'll want it, let me think about this. I want it somewhere at the top left. Now I don't want it too far, otherwise it's going to interfere with the edge of the texture. So I might bring it, yeah, about there. It's a bit of a trial and error, really. Yeah, okay, I'm quite happy with that. Now what I'll do is I want to add some more of them, so I'll just hit OK. And I'll repeat the process. So Filters, Light and Shadow, Gradient Flare. Now I'll edit again, and this time go to the Glow tab and change the size. So change it to 70 to make it look a bit smaller. And now I'll position it maybe a bit too far, too close. Yeah, I think that will be fine. So I'll say OK, and I'll do that again. So I'll do it another 2 times. Gradient flare. I'll put one here. Say OK. Yep, it's looking all right. I'll do it again. I'll put it down here. Okay, I'll do that. Do I need another one? I think 4 should be enough, honestly. It's a really simple icon, of course, and it's just for our change weapon script. Now, I'm not done. What I'm going to do is so the idea is to make a sort of like a particle stream with this N1 just a bit brighter to make it obvious to the player that they're selecting the particle cannon. Now the next thing I need to do is of course to get rid of this black line. So let's go to Layer, Transparency, Color to Alpha. So Layer, Transparency, Color to Alpha. I need to tell it that it needs to select the black color, so full black. Okay. Okay, and there you go. It removed the black line because that's what it's trying to make transparent, which is neat. And that really should be it. It's a really simple particle effect. I could have put another one, maybe, but I think that's enough. So File, Save As. I'll send it to our Assets, Textures folder. and I'll name it ParticleCannon icon. So ParticleCannon icon.png. And let's save that. Yep. Alright, so that's it for this step. In the next step, we'll discuss the FirePorticleCannon script. We'll first assemble everything, run the game, and then I'll talk about the script. We're on to our last step, which is to assemble everything and then talk about the FirePorticleCannon script. We need to complete our ParticleCannon prefab, so let's go drop in the FirePorticleCannon script. So FirePorticleCannon, there it is. Just drag it in, and now this script needs the game object ParticleCannon Hit, so it needs that ParticleCannon Hit prefab that we had made. So let's just drag that into it as well. Now we need to attach this to our players. So let's go ahead to our players and drop them into the hierarchy. Let's drop the ParticleCannon prefab in as well. So the player is at a height of 0.5 and the ParticleCannon is as well. Well, actually, the way that it's set up is the ParticleCannon prefab's already inside the player where we want it. Let me just check that the directions are right. So the Z direction is pointing that way for the ParticleCannon prefab. And it's the same for the blue player, which is great. Let's just drag the ParticleCannon into the blue player. Yes, continue. And hit apply. Okay, and that's saved the blue player prefab now. Let's delete it and repeat for the red player. So I'll drag the red player in. And yes, they have the same position, so this should work no problem. So ParticleCannon again. And I'll just drop this ParticleCannon right into the player since it's right at the correct position. So let's do that. Yep, and apply. So the prefab is saved. It now has the ParticleCannon inside, and I can just remove it. Oops, not delete the name, just delete that game object. Now another thing actually I need to do for the players is go over to their change weapon script. There we go. So it needs a new icon now. So the ParticleCannon icon. So let's go ahead and attach that. So there it is. I have it in my list. That's the ParticleCannon icon. And I'll do the same thing for the red player. Go ahead, find it, and drop it in. Okay, and that should be it. We should have assembled everything. We should be able to build and run now. So I'll save it and go ahead and build and run and give it a shot. Okay, I'll join the red team. And I'll just move this a bit to give us a bit more space there. All right. And I'll go ahead and change the weapon. So with the 3 key, and there we go. That's our new weapon right there. That's the ParticleCannon. And yes, it's certainly there. And it's certainly shooting correctly. We can see that the World Particle Collider is working because, well, once I explain the script, it'll probably make more sense. But what's happening is that the ParticleCannon hit effect is getting instantiated at the correct location, exactly where the ParticleCannon particles themselves are striking, and that location is determined by a ray cast. Since we can't actually capture the position of the particles, each particle itself, without having to do complicated things like potentially creating lots of game objects, which would be, I guess, pointless. Alright, so that's good. I guess the sensible thing would be to load up another game and have another player involved as well and see how the damage works. So I've loaded up another one, and I'll go ahead and this one I'll join the blue team. And let's change the weapon. So let's go to the particle cannon. And let's go ahead and attack the red player. Oh, by the way, you would have noticed there that the red player's health was a bit less than what their maximum was. That was just waiting for the assign health script to kick in and assign that 130 health that they're supposed to have rather than the 100 health. So that was all that was. Okay, so let's go ahead and fire at the red player. See what happens. Yeah, it's working. So I can see that I'm dropping the red player's health. Now I could also see up here that it is visible, the instantiation of the particles. Okay, so let me go ahead and fire away, and yes, that player is destroyed, which is pretty neat. That's good. Let's try it the other way. Let's see that it works against both players. Yep, I can see that the blue player is getting hit, and even up above in the scene view I can see that as well. And there they go, they've been destroyed. Okay, so that's it. We've trialed it. Now I really need to actually talk about what you are seeing. So I might just close this down, turn it off, and shut down the server. Okay, and let's go ahead and open up the script. So the FirePorticleCannon script. I'll expand the summary and just go through it. So this is attached, as you already saw. It's attached to the ParticleCannon prefab. And what this script does, it does access the spawn script just to figure out which team the player is on. And it accesses the health and damage script for applying damage, and the change weapon script, to check that it is the currently selected weapon. So in our variables, we have two booleans to determine, to capture which team this game object belongs to, the script is on. And then we have a couple of variables for setting our particle parameters. So we have here the fire rate for the weapon, that next fire variable, because we're using that time.time to control the rate of fire. And we have the speed of particle, which is 100, so very fast, as you saw. The particle size, we set it here as 1.5f, so you can change it from here. And the particle energy, which is 2. So it'll last for 2 seconds. So it's able to travel 200 meters if it's 2 by 100. Okay, and then the cost. So each particle fired takes up 1 energy. And we have a couple of vector 3s and the quick reference for the camera head transform. So we have here particle fire from, so the position to fire from, and the hit position. This is the position that's expected for the particle to hit, and we're going to instantiate the particle hit effect at that position. Then we have here these two other variables. These are used to determine how much time we should wait before instantiating the hit effect, because what we're going to do is we fire the particle, and at the same time we've cast a ray as well. And if the ray hits something in its path, that means the particle is probably going to hit that as well. So we capture that location where the ray has hit, we check the distance, and from that distance we know how long to delay before instantiating the hit effect. So that way it looks like the particle itself has reached that location and hit something, and the particle hit effect is instantiated at the correct time. Okay, then we have some more variables, the ray cost itself, the range, which is 200 because we expect it to be able to travel 200 meters, and of course some a reference to, the public game object ParticleCannon Hit, so that's the hit effect itself, which we attached in the inspector, and then these two script references. Okay, so in the start function, we set up our references, we access the spawn script and set which team we belong to. Then in the update function, we check a lot of things, so this cursor has to be locked. The first player has to press left click, of course. There has to have enough time elapsed since the last particle was fired, we need enough energy, and this weapon should be the currently selected weapon. So a lot of conditions there. If they're all true, if it's all met, then of course we set the next fire time, we drain the player's energy, we capture the position from which the particle should be fired from, and that's that camera head transform.position. And then we emit the particle across the network, and that the network view, this RPC, emit particle cannon, it requires two items: where to instantiate the particle from and the direction to send it. So let's just scroll down. So this void emit particle cannon, and I made it require two variables, both vector3s, and I use this particle emitter.emit. So this is an inbuilt thing. .emit fire from, so that's a position to fire from, and then the direction, the velocity basically is what it needs next. So direction times particle speed gives the velocity, and then of course the size of the particle and the energy of the particle, and I just set it to color.white, so that way, you know, the particle texture itself, its color will be the prevalent color. Okay, then going back up, so we've done that, we've emitted the particle. So now, yes, here we determine where to instantiate the particle hit effect. So we cast that ray. If it hits something, we capture that position. Then we calculate how long to wait before instantiating the hit effect. So we do that by just calculating the distance from where we are to where it was, where the ray hit. So we get that distance. And of course, the delay is equal to the particle energy times the distance from hit over range. So the distance over the range, which was 200, gives us a ratio, which we can times by the number 2, which is the particle energy, gives us the number of seconds that we need to delay. Then we start this coroutine. So because it's a delay, we have it delay its code for that time, whatever number of seconds, so 1 point whatever, and then we give it the hit position as well. This is where it'll instantiate the particle effect. So let's just scroll down to that actually. So here's the coroutine. We have it wait, so the wait time is what we supply, that's the delay. It needs a vector3 position, and it has here this RPC ParticleCannon hit effect, and it's sent to everyone, and it needs the position, and that's here. It instantiates the ParticleCannon hit at that location provided, and just quaternion.identity for the rotation. So pretty simple. Okay, now here's a very different bit of code right here. Now this is what allows the particle to carry out damage application, because here we have a new inbuilt Unity function we're using, and it's called void on particle collision. Game object other is what it's looking at, is the parameter that it captures. So when a particle hits something, this bit of code is going to execute. That particle was generated by this script, and so this function is going to run, and whatever that particle hit, it's going to recognize that game object that was hit. So that's why we just have it captured here, other. So the moment that happens, we need to do if network view.isMine is true. We need this check here, because having it in the start function is not sufficient for this function, this inbuilt function here. Unless we have the check here again, it's going to run on everyone's computer and cause a problem. So we just have the check in, and of course we look at the tag of what was hit. So we know whether it's a player just by, you know, the blue team trigger or the red team trigger, and we check which team we're on, so then we know whether to apply damage. So there's no friendly fire. Okay, then we access the health and damage script and reduce the player's health. We tell them that they were attacked and what by. And that is it. So then the health and damage script takes care of the damage application. So that's it. So it was quite simple. It's a useful bit of code, this one, which you can use for a range of particle weapons. And what we have here is a particle weapon that'll work across the network. Okay, so that is it for this video. So our next video is going to be about the screen hurt effect. So we'll be making a texture there, and whenever the player is hurt, then there'll be like this reddish texture that'll appear on the screen to let the player know that they're hurt. They don't need to look at their health bar to know that they were hit by something. So that's for the next video, and I'll see you then.